Good morning. So I'm just about to get started on editing last week's vlog, but I have no idea what I'm going to read this week. I've been doing this thing where after I've done my TBR for the month, I essentially just split the books up into categories if it is at all possible and try and keep them contained within a weekly vlog once again where it is possible. And originally the live show for Golden Fool was going to be this Sunday. However, a couple of us have things going on and it is also the Euro final, which England have a chance of being in. If so, I would be incredibly sad if I was doing a live show in here while all of the boys are in there watching football. I only watch international games, by the way. I don't actually like football all that much, but tournaments I watch. So we've moved it to the 18th and it is a chunky book. It's 630 pages and I do read Robin Hobb a little bit slower than I read other things. So on the one hand, I don't really want to leave this to the last minute, but on the other hand, I don't want to read it so far in advance that I forget some of the key points and I'm not as excited for the live show. So I don't know, I could move one of my other plans to this week. I'm getting a little bit anxious making a decision. Decisions make me incredibly anxious. It's not even funny. There's not even a reason for it. Like, this decision I'm trying to make is not even a big deal at all, but it is what it is. I also have Krusty Butt to deal with and while everything does seem to be looking good with him, that also does make me a little bit nervous. So generally just a little bit up and down at the moment, cannot lie. So what I am going to do is just post a poll on Patreon that says pick an emoji, and I'm going to give them 3 emojis to choose from and we will see what the result is, and that will dedicate what this vlog is going to be, because I have a few hours until I can start reading anyway. So I'm sat in exactly the same place that I was sat earlier, but it is a lot later in the day now. It is exactly 6 p.m. Got my vlog and everything edited, went to the shop to grab a few things I needed, including like cat food, and then I've just done a 45-minute workout, got a shower and put my spring rolls in the oven. But I gotta go and make the stir fry to go with them very soon. But I'm about to check the results of this poll and see what we're working with here. So oh no. Oh, no. So of the 3 emojis, the fire has 38 votes, the swords have 20 votes, and the spaceship, the rocket, has 11 votes. Honestly, because it's an emoji, I feel like people have just voted for the top one. Either that or my patrons actually hate me. And I knew when I was doing this, I was like, I shouldn't put the flame at the top because the flame was like the worst case scenario. But it is something that I'm a little bit nervous about and I kind of just want to get started to see if I can do it. But holy fuck, I was not prepared for that this week. It's probably a good idea actually that this is happening this week now, which I'll tell you what this is in just a second. But I've been a little bit ahead on my filming, so I have like less YouTube stuff to do. Essentially it's mainly editing, so I guess this week is as good a week as any. But the flame represented An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. Now if you saw my Bookopoli TBR, you will know that A Torch Against the Night is actually on my Bookopoli TBR, and this is my Patreon pick. It is Farina's pick left over from June because I didn't get to it, and I pushed it into this month specifically because I wanted to do a thing. And for a while now I have been wanting to try and pick up and read an entire series in a video in 1 week, in one vlog, and for some reason I decided that I wanted to start with this one. I mean, this book isn't especially thick, or it doesn't look especially thick, so I was like, cool, yeah, I could probably do that. And it's like, yeah, I could when I'm reading at my peak. When I'm not at my peak, I absolutely cannot do this. I'm struggling to finish 1 book in a vlog, never mind 4, but we're gonna give it a solid try. I'm not gonna force myself to continue reading this series if I'm not enjoying it. So like, I'm gonna read the first book, 100% can guarantee that. I will give the second one a go. If I don't like it, I may DNF it, and I can't even guarantee to you guys I'm going to read the entire series in this vlog, but we are going to attempt it. So oh good lord, I remember when I added up the pages for this series, it adds up to approximately like an average of 500 pages per book, which is 2,000 pages in a week, which is 285 pages per day. You are lucky if you can get me to do that with graphic novel pages, never mind full length pages. But we're going to do this. I believe Cody just read A Torch Against the Night and she was flying through it in sprints. She said it's real fast paced, so yeah, we'll see how I do with this one, but I better get cracking. Oh my god. So Ember in the Ashes, I don't really know too much about it aside from that it's a really hyped series. I think the main character is called Leia, and there is a main guy character in it who is called Elias. I do know that it's dual perspective because the audiobooks have two narrators. I have access to the audiobooks through Scribd, so I may utilize those, especially as it is a dual narration kind of deal, because as you guys know, I am incredibly fussy about audiobooks, but if it is like full cast or multiple narrators, I usually tend to enjoy it a bit more. And it has something to do with the main character's brother, who is going to be murdered for treason, I think, and so she joins a rebel organization who offer to help her save her brother, providing that she spies on this like elite military school. I've heard excellent things about most of this series. I've heard the first book is really good. I think the second one's really good. The third is the worst, and I haven't actually heard much about the fourth one, which I think was released either late last year or early this year. I may actually do some impromptu Patreon sprints tonight if nobody else has any Patreon sprints scheduled to encourage me to actually sit down and read, because I really need to. Oh, I can't believe that this is happening. So my camera is on a little bit of a precarious angle right now. I am what you would call piss wet through, and I have a massive spot here on my face. So we're all just like, everything about this is just not great. But I'm wet because I just came back from the vet. A little bit of an unplanned vet visit, was not a good time. Hamilton has split some of his surgery open. He has a little hole, maybe about this big. It's real, it's kind of small. It's bigger than I would like it to be, but he has kind of small hole in the area where his surgery was, which is essentially he's moving too much, and it is on the bit like it's slightly below where his tail lifts, like the hinge of his tail. So I mean, it's not entirely unexpected, but he has just extended his recovery time probably by a considerable amount. But I suspect that the plan is kind of going to be let everything else heal up. Let's see how everything heals up, and then probably just allow that little hole to close on its own. There's no sign of infection or anything, which is good and important. It's just a little bit inconvenient, and I've been having panic attacks all afternoon, which we love for me. But that is not actually what I came here to talk to you guys about. Just get my backpack because I took my book to the vets, because we all know I have a lot to read this week. So reading Ember in the Ashes. It's only Tuesday, we're not surprised. And I'm on page 258, so I wanted to read 280 pages a day. But what I did manage to read was half of this yesterday, and then I read another like 26 pages today. So this is dual perspective from the perspectives of Leia and Elias. Leia is a scholar, and in this world, the scholars were conquered by the martial class, and the martial class is very much based on ancient Rome and gladiators and all of that kind of stuff. So Leia's people were conquered, and they are treated as slaves in this world. They are very much oppressed. Now Elias is one of the martial class, and he goes to this elite school called Blackcliff, and there is a prophecy that the Emperor's line is going to fail at some point, and a prestigious member of like the graduating class of Blackcliff Academy is going to take the Emperor's place. So this story starts where Leia's brother is taken away, and he's going to be executed for treason. So Leia joins the Scholar Rebellion and asks them to free her brother, and in exchange she will go to Blackcliff and spy. At the time of all of this happening, the trials have finally happened. I think it's like 500 years in the past when this prophecy was made, and it's finally come to the time where they are going to select somebody from the school who is going to become the Emperor, and this selection process is a series of trials. So Elias and his friend Helene are two of the highest ranking members in their class, so they are entered into the trials along with two other people from their class, and Leia has been sent to spy on the academy at the time that these trials are happening, and her main purpose is to find out about the trials and find out when they are going to happen and any specifics before the actual event. So I'm really enjoying this. I'm really enjoying this at the minute. It is incredibly fast paced. It is serving to suck me into the world. Like I can read massive chunks of this, no problem. I'm really enjoying it, and it's also fast paced, but not in a way where it's like constant action scenes. It's just really easy to read and really really compelling with short chapters and nothing overly dense. I do have a couple of criticisms of the writing, but it is Sabaa Tahir's debut book, so I feel like it's trying to be a little bit overly dramatic in the writing. An example that I can give you is that often in Laya's perspective, somebody will ask her a question, and then in italics it will have like a paragraph of her thoughts, so she'll be answering the question but only in her thoughts in like a more straightforward or sassy manner, and then after that it'll say, but I didn't say that, and then she'll actually reply. But like, I know that she didn't say it because it was italicized. Like, I don't need that extra addition, and it's just that little bit, like that little touch of melodrama that is bugging me a little bit. It does read very much like YA. I do believe that this is published as YA in the US, but I think it's published as adult in the UK. It's published under Harper Voyager, at least for this first book, but I know they did like multiple cover changes on this, and I would say that the cover changes that they've done since this original one are a lot more YA looking, so I don't know whether they changed the intended audience as they publish more books in the series. But the tone and the writing and the characters and the themes, there's also like hints of romantic subplots, and I'm actually a little bit concerned we're gonna get a love square at some point in this series, which is not what I was anticipating from what I've like heard of this series and stuff. But all of that stuff is very YA, but I think it was probably published as adult in the UK because of some of the themes in here. There are strong themes of slavery, there's also mutilation, frequent mentions of sexual assault, and the world is rather brutal as well. So yeah, enjoying it so far. My favorite character so far, in case any of you guys are interested, is Helene, who I think she's kind of like the bitch character, I want to say, from what I've heard of her, like not from my own experience, but I'm really loving her so far. And she definitely has some secrets that I am excited to uncover. There's also magic in this. I thought it was more of a martial fantasy, which it definitely is, but there are also some magical elements that I wasn't expecting, and some like mythical creatures, which does kind of make sense actually, because while a lot of this is based on ancient Rome, I do also believe that it draws on Pakistani heritage and culture as well. But yeah, my thoughts overall are positive. I'm really excited to continue. I'm feeling a lot more optimistic that I can actually do this challenge now with how much I read yesterday, but I've had a little bit of a setback with hand today. Not got as much done as I would like to have got done, and it is like I have the Buffy watch along today for 3 hours and I still haven't worked out, so we'll see how it goes throughout the week. But so far I am loving the first book in this series. Hey, last night at like 2 a.m. I finished an Ember in the Ashes. It was a really quick read. I'm surprised. Like when I went into this I was like, absolutely 100% no way that I can do this. But I mean, we're doing well so far. We're a little bit behind where I would like to be, but 1 book in 2 days, that is a lot for me. That is a big deal, and I really enjoyed this book as well. I gave it 4 stars. It contains a lot of tropes that I really love. So actually quite a few tropes that I really love. So we have like a school setting. In this case it is the Marshall Academy. We also have a series of trials, and all of the trials are contained in this 1 book. And then we also have a like underground spy network resistance kind of deal, which is something else that I really enjoy in books. So trope wise, definitely on point. My criticisms of it, I would say the things that I've already covered. So it's a little bit melodramatic in the writing, and I will say that while the plot wasn't necessarily overly predictable, I wasn't really shocked by the direction that any of this book took. I was shocked by how kind of ruthless this book was. It wasn't what I was expecting going into this. To be fair, I didn't really know what I was expecting because all I knew about this is the vague bones of the plot and that everybody says it's really good. I will say I don't know if this is going to be an unpopular opinion or not, because I don't know the general consensus, because An Ember in the Ashes is one of those series that's like really hyped, but I actually don't know that many people who have read the entire thing. And this was published, I think it's because it was published in 2015, so it took 5 years for all 4 books to be released. So it's been a while. Like this predates me being on BookTube. It was released in the same year as Red Queen, and Red Queen is another series that I don't hear a great deal about on BookTube, so maybe that's why. I wasn't around, I wasn't watching BookTube at the time when this first book was released, so I missed all of the initial hype on it. So I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or not, but I mentioned before that I feel like there's a bit of a love square going on. When I went into this, I kind of thought I knew what the main ship was going to be, and after finishing this book I still feel like I know what the main ship is going to be. I don't ship it. It's not the ship that I ship. I don't don't know whether that is an unpopular opinion. I don't know whether most people do ship that ship, or whether, like me, they ship a particular other ship in this series. I'm trying to keep this non-spoilery while also giving you guys some thoughts and information. But I have also just started, because I had to spend some time with Hammy this morning. I spend like 30 minutes to an hour with him every morning before I start work, just because he is on his own, and if nobody's in that room then he's by himself, and that sucks. So I am 33 pages into A Torch Against the Night. I do have a physical copy arriving today, but I have started the ebook, and now I'm wondering whether I should have ordered a physical copy. But it's too late now because it's going to be here in a couple of hours. But I flew through the first 33 pages, and I do think that it is a really good idea that I'm doing this video where I'm reading the whole series back to back, because the second book starts off literally where the first book ended, and it is just a continuation of like the, I guess, the end scene of the first book, which I was a little bit surprised by, because with how the first book wrapped up, I kind of thought we'd have maybe a couple of weeks, we'd pick up after the initial action, I guess, of what would happen in between the books, where the characters are kind of taking a moment to rest and reflect, but it does, like, it is a direct continuation. There was one thing that did shock me with An Ember in the Ashes, and that is kind of the specifics of where it leaves the character of Helene, and I'm really intrigued to see how that manifests in A Torch Against the Night. And I have noticed when I started the ebook, because it has the contents page at the beginning, that I do get to read from Helene's perspective in A Torch Against the Night, which I'm really excited for, because after An Ember in the Ashes, I would say she's still my favourite character. And actually, in terms of perspectives, I definitely enjoyed reading from Elias's perspective more than Liar's, and I'm not sure at the moment whether that is just because he had that Marshall Academy setting, and also the trial plotline, which in terms of tropes is what I am more interested in. I will say as well that whenever I've had subscription box art for An Ember in the Ashes, in fact the bookmark that I used is from Fairy Loot, there are 4 characters on here, and I know that we have Liar and Helene, which I have always known. I'm going to assume that this one's Elias, but I have no idea who this person is. And I remember, I think it was an Illumicrate, I got a set of character cards for An Ember in the Ashes, which was 4 characters, and I gave them to Ryan because he's actually a big fan of this series, and there were 4 of those as well, but I have no idea who that 4th prominent character is, even after finishing the first book. So I'm really intrigued to see, because I do have a little bit of kind of a theory of who it could be, but I'm not actually sure. Is it her brother? Because the whole plot of this, the setup plot of this, is that she's looking for her brother, but I'm sure I'll find out throughout the course of the series. Good morning, guys and girls. I am just having my morning cuddle time with Ham, who is here. Hey, baby. Are you in a bad mood? He's always in a bad mood these days, and honestly, who can blame him? He has a very sore bum. But I dropped the ball a little bit on A Torch Against the Night yesterday. However, England didn't drop the ball, and we are through to the finals of the Euros, which I'm not confident we're going to win against Italy, but it's the last match. I'm proud that we even got this far for the first time in 55 years. We made it to an international tournament final, so I'm happy with that. Yeah, I didn't read very much last night. I'm now quite behind. I'm on page 130. I've just read 18 pages now, and I'm going to read a little bit more while Ham is settled on my knee. Even though I have quite a bit to get done today, I need to finish editing a video and also make candles. I just don't like moving him when he's settled. But essentially, for pretty much the entirety of yesterday, I had a migraine. It was kind of on and off all day, but like, I woke up with it in the morning. It eased off a little bit throughout the first part of the day, and then I went to Tesco with Curtis to grab some bits, and it really kicked in again. I was feeling like nauseous and stuff, and from then it was like a little bit worse throughout the rest of the day, and by the time the football was over and stuff, I just could not stay up. Like, just reading and using my eyes, because I was then at that point tired as well. It was just making my migraine so much worse. So I just read a couple of chapters and went to sleep. But Ashley is doing Patreon sprints tonight, and she's invited myself, Steph and Jade to join. So I'm probably going to join those. And also when I have my video edited and all of that stuff is done, and I'm making candles after I've wicked all of my jars and stuff, it's just a case of like pouring the wax, waiting for the wax to come to temperature, and then pouring it into the jars. So in those gaps, while I'm waiting for the wax to cool, I'm hoping to read some of this and then catch up to where I should have been this morning by the time we get to like dinner time later on. And then I can try and read the second half this evening. But I will say that I'm not quite enjoying this one as much as Ember. It is much more fast paced. Like I think that the pacing is good in Ember in that it keeps me compelled. It keeps me reading and it's very engrossing, but it's not like back-to-back action scenes. And I'm finding that in the first 100 pages of this so far, it is very action based. As I said, it continues straight from the end of An Ember in the Ashes, and I don't love really fast-paced, plot-driven, action-based books, so I'm not enjoying it quite as much. And it's taking me a little bit longer to get into it, but hopefully when I hit like the page 150 mark, I'll have eased in and we'll start to really enjoy it from that point. Fingers crossed. So it's 20 past midnight, it's Thursday. I'm desperately trying to finish this book, but I still have a ways to go. I'm on page 304 of this. Content warnings for this one, I'm gonna say like death of an animal, but not like a pet type animal, more in like a butchery kind of situation, and also child abuse, and just generally like Sabaa Tahir does not shy away from the torture elements, and I actually kind of appreciate it. It's a little bit difficult to read for me in parts, just with particular body parts in terms of torture, because of the medical kind of anxiety I have and the way that anxiety manifests in me. It's like tingling in my fingers and my toes, but I like it because I feel like sometimes in young adult, which this reads very young adult but more adult themes and things like torture, it's harder to believe sometimes that the characters have gone through such great ordeals when things like the torture elements are shied away from, and this really does go into detail, and I am enjoying that about it, I guess, just because it adds a little bit more depth to the story. I want to say one of the reasons why this is taking me so long, one is that just migraine, I've got a slight headache now as well, but I just didn't enjoy it as much throughout the beginning. It was very fast paced and just too many action scenes kind of strung together with not much in between for me. But since I've got into part 3, which is quite late in the book, it's like 270 pages or something, it's picking up a little bit more in terms of being a little bit more interesting. I will say that I just don't care about the romance in this series at all. Like, we have the low square, and I feel like the ships that are going to end up as endgame are not the ships that I actually want, but I also just wouldn't care if there wasn't any romance at all. So like, I have a preference because these ships have kind of been hinted at, but just like overall, if there was no romance in this, would not be bothered. It feels a little bit insta-lovey, but kind of not. I feel like it's less insta-love and more kind of develops out of nowhere kind of situation, and I'm not feeling chemistry between the characters. The only reason that I know it's a romance is because Sabaa Tahir is like telling me these characters are doing romantic things together, but generally I don't really feel it. Hello, so it's much later in the day than I would like it to be, but I have just finished A Touch Against the Night. I don't really have too much to add on what I've already said about this as I've been going through and reading it, but I will say that while I enjoyed this significantly less, well, not significantly, it came out as like a high 3-star, and An Ember in the Ashes was like a middle of the range 4-star. I do think that this was better plotted than An Ember in the Ashes. I felt like the first book wasn't necessarily predictable, but as soon as a plot point was introduced to give you something to think about, it was very quickly revealed. And in this one, while I kind of guessed the direction of a lot of the plot points, the specifics of them took me by surprise, and while I was kind of in the right area with my guessing, the actualities of it were actually different to what I thought. So I definitely really appreciated that, and I do think that the writing and the plotting and stuff is stronger in this one, but I just don't really care about the romantic elements in here. The plot seems to be heading in a more magic based direction, which starting off, this is like not magic at all in the first book, and then it's like slowly introduced to where I think the bulk of the plot is actually going to go in that magical direction. And at the minute I feel like that is a little bit undeveloped, and I feel like the characters aren't acting as kind of surprised or intrigued as I would in their positions with these elements coming into play. I will say as well that I didn't love the first half of this. I found it to be a little bit of a drag. Started to pick up towards the middle, and then I really enjoyed the end. So finally finished that at 4:25, and I received a parcel today. Why does this always happen to me? This one, fingers crossed, should have 2 books in it. And yes, this has really upset me actually, because A Sky Beyond the Storm was only released, I think, late 2021. So the paperback is unavailable. So now I just have one hardback of this series. But I'm just about to pour my last round of candles, and I need to set up my website and my Etsy for EU customers, ready for the restock at 6 p.m. But then after that, I'm going to be starting a Reaper at the Gates. So this one is, oh, the font has changed in this one. The font is different. I don't like it. I don't know if I can show you guys. This one is A Torch Against the Night, and then compare that to a Reaper at the Gates. It's like, it's kind of subtle but noticeable because I've just binged the first 2. Oh, I think the font is smaller as well. Oh god. Okay, so this one has 458 pages, so 4 pages more than A Torch Against the Night, but the font is smaller, so I'm going to be aiming to get to page 279, I think, with it already being 4:30 p.m. and I have the Buffy watch along tonight. I want to work out, and I need to sort out my website for candles. So wish me luck, because I'm gonna need it. Good afternoon. So I dramatically overslept today. Curtis was going out to do some things with his friends, hey ham, and he woke up really early and left, and I just stayed in bed until 11:30. So then I had to come downstairs and see to Munchkin, whose butt is healing. Thankfully, there's been a lot of progress on that this week. There's quite a bit of like crusty looking bits I'm a little bit concerned about right now, but the actual bit that came apart is healing, which is real good. So fingers crossed it stays that way. Oh no, stop chewing. What are you doing? What did you do? He just chewed on my camera string. I also, you might have noticed, I accidentally dyed my hair purple last night. So I tone my hair really haphazardly. Whenever I have a bath, so like once a week, maybe once every other week, I mix a little blob of dye with my purple conditioner just to give it a bit more purple, even though my purple conditioner is really good and does add like a lilac hue. And I got a different color to try. I've been using Aubergine Dream from Bleach London, and I got Bruised Violet to try that instead because I didn't feel like Aubergine Dream was really doing too much. So I mixed it in as usual, and I do it so haphazardly. I literally just like put a blob of conditioner on my hand, put a blob of dye in, and mix it together with my finger, and I do it in 2 halves. Like I separate it and then just smoosh it in, and then leave it on my hair while I read for however long I feel like. I think last night it was about, I don't even know, 25-30 minutes. So I go about 10-15 minutes and then I brush it through, and then I go another 10-15 minutes and then rinse it off, and it's actually like properly dyed my hair purple. Do you know how many times I have tried, like actually tried to properly dye my hair purple, and it hasn't worked? And this happened by accident. I'm not mad about it though, because it looks pretty good. But I'm currently 152 I think pages into a Reaper at the Gates, so I'm really behind. And Jade was running Patreon sprints earlier. I think she started at 2, so she should still be going. So I'm going to watch some of those and try and read as much of this as possible before Curtis comes home and I make dinner. So keep your fingers crossed for me. I'm not sure how I'm feeling about this one so far. It definitely started off with a slower pace than A Torch Against the Night, which I really appreciated and I enjoyed that and was really enjoying settling into the third book in this series. But I just feel like this series has gone in a very different direction than I expected it to. I was right about some fantastical elements coming in a little more, although especially in some characters' perspectives it's still mainly focused on the martial fantasy aspects. But then the martial fantasy aspects are now really politically heavy, like more dense than they ever were at the beginning of this series. So I'm struggling to keep up with those a little bit, and some of the fantastical elements are just confusing me a bit. So we'll see how I go. I'm like I'm enjoying it okay so far, but yeah, I'll let you know how I'm feeling when I'm a little bit further in. I'm on page 226 and I think I've pinpointed some of my issues, I want to say, with this book. It's feeling very disjointed. I think all of the characters that we read from now are in separate places doing separate things, and it's like Sabaa Tahir is trying to illustrate points in a really elaborate way. I was wondering why I was confused about this enemy that one of the characters is dealing with in this city that's away from like where the series started, and it's because this enemy has been created specifically for Sabaa Tahir to make a point about somebody that this character is trying to deal with. A battle against this enemy just lasted like half a page because the point is not the enemy or the battle, it is the point that Sabaa Tahir is trying to make. That's the reason this whole thing exists. But like, I feel like you have two options here. You either don't include this enemy at all and try and make your point within the bounds of the narrative as it already exists, or you have to fully go into this enemy. Like, this enemy has to be here for a reason, they have to be developed, like the battle has to be a thing, because it's just coming across as like scattered and disjointed to me, and I'm struggling to keep up with what everybody is doing, and it is just like really skippy. Like, in one chapter a character will be, I don't know, like chilling in their room pondering things, and then there's like a paragraph break and they come back and the city is on fire. Like, I feel like we're missing all of the key events and we're just seeing the characters react to stuff or jumping in at random points of this conflict that actually realistically is going on for quite some time, and it's just not feeling plausible to me right now, and I'm struggling to keep on top of everything that's happening because all of these large scale events are condensed into such small portions that they're lacking the detail that makes them stick in my mind. So I just don't really have much of a clue what's going on, and I'm struggling, which is sad because I feel like this series could have either been really long and all of these things could have been really well developed and you could have really gone into things and really become attached, and these things could actually feel high stakes, because at the minute, like, this is the middle of the book, I know nothing terrible is going to happen as a result of these random conflicts that keep springing up. Or this book could have been a trilogy and you could have stripped out all of this unnecessary, I guess, stuff and made the story smaller, because I feel like the issue with this book is that it's trying to do way too much within one book and I'm struggling to keep up with it. So England lost the Euros, which I mean, I'm not a big football fan, I only watch international games, so I'm not devastated, but I mean, we had a chance, so I'm kind of sad about it, but we're just gonna forget about that, okay? Because I also finished A Reaper at the Gates. I have no idea what time it is now. I know that it's late and I was anticipating having quite a lot of time to read today. So I only just finished this and I gave it 3 stars. The enemy thing that I was talking about, how like random enemies were just coming up and it felt like they were trying to drive a point, like that enemy did kind of make sense by the time I got to the end of the book, and I actually really enjoyed the last, I want to say maybe 100 pages of this where everything was going down. I really liked that part because it had a lot of, like, I want to say like big moments and all of the characters like really going through some stuff, or at least a couple of them were. The character of Elias, I mean, what happened? What happened? I'm hoping that this whole thing with him comes to some sort of fruition in the final book, because I just feel like he's been fading away throughout this entire series, you know? Like, I feel like this has been taken over by Laia and Helene. So I'm hoping he comes back to a more prominent role in the last book, because in this one I just didn't understand. Like, I understand the point of his character, but I just don't understand why it was done in the way that it was done. I will say that something that I did really enjoy about this is that the structure of the plot follows the structure of a prophecy that is towards the beginning of the book, and I really liked that, and seeing how the prophecy was manifesting throughout the actual plot of the book. But I was right about it going into a more fantastical element. I mean, the martial fantasy elements are still there and they are still relevant to what is going on, but there's definitely a lot more fantastical magical elements than were present at the beginning of this series. So 3 stars for this. It is a lower 3-star than A Torch Against the Night. Torch Against the Night was quite a high 3-star. I don't think this is as awful as everyone makes it out to be. I don't know, because my feelings have kind of been overshadowed by that last 100 pages, which I thought were really, really good. Oh, there was also a plot reveal in here that I've known pretty much since book 1. So I was kind of disappointed that I was right about it, but I'm glad that it finally came. It's not that I was disappointed that I was right, actually. It's just that it dragged on for such a long time, up to most of the way through the 3rd book in the series. Like, it was made out to be a really big deal, and it was kind of a big deal, but because I already guessed it, I was kind of like, can we like hurry up with this one? And there was also a couple more reveals towards the end of this that I didn't guess and I didn't suspect, and I really enjoyed how those plot points came together. So now that I'm done with Reaper at the Gates, it's Sky Beyond the Storm time, and I have less than, oh god, that creak when I opened the book. I have less than 24 hours, I guess, to read 516 pages. So wish me luck. I mean, I will say that as well as this having really tiny font, the chapters have no like page space, if that makes sense. I'll show you what I mean. So normally the chapters start like halfway down the page and they were pushed right to the top of this, so they really consolidated the book into a smaller paperback, whereas this one, the font is normal sized again, or like the same size as the rest of them. And oh, we still have the chapters pushed right up to the top, so I guess we'll see how this goes. My thing that I do on Mondays is edit and schedule my vlog. The vlog won't be finished, so I can't do that, but I think I'm going to spend the first part of my day sorting this vlog out, and then the rest of the day I will have to read. So I hope I can get it done, but I guess we'll see. I need to get this done now. I need to do it. Like, we only have 1 book left. Good afternoon. It is 2:30 p.m. and I've just edited all of this vlog up to date, but I am halfway-ish through A Sky Beyond the Storm. I read another 120-ish pages this morning before I came through to do some editing, so I'm almost halfway, and I mean, I'm enjoying this one, I guess. I just really feel like this series was strongest at the beginning, so far this is better and more compelling and less confusing than A Reaper at the Gates, but it's not to the level of the first 2 books, especially the first book. Maybe could be on par with the second, but like, what is Elias's perspective? Like, I'm nearly halfway through this book. It's really sad as well, because in terms of my favorite characters, Helene, definitely 100% without a doubt my favorite character of this series, and Laia was actually, like, in book 1 I didn't really care much for Laia aside from the fact that she had the underground spy network plotline, which I really enjoyed, and Elias was my favorite perspective. Then in the second book we had the addition of Helene, which I really enjoyed, but I still think I preferred Elias the most out of the 3 of them. And then from Reaper at the Gates, like, I've lost all interest in Elias. I will say he's doing something a little bit interesting in this, and we're getting some information about those fantastical elements and the history, but like, I just feel so bad for the guy, not because of anything that's happened to him in the book, but just because his character has taken such a nosedive. And I'm really hoping that he can claw something back at least before I get to the end of this book. I do feel like the main characters in this series don't really react to things. Like, they're out there, they're doing stuff, they have their missions, they have their purposes, but they don't seem to have, like, they're not 3-dimensional, I want to say. So like how I said way back in, was it Torch Against the Night, how people just don't seem as intrigued or shocked by the magical elements of this world than I feel they should be. I feel like all of the main characters just take everything in stride and don't stop to like wonder or be shocked. There's no moments where anything terrible's happened to them, where they've had, like, I don't want to say like a deep depression, but like where there's times where the things that are happening to them have actually actually affected them. Whereas on the flip side of that, we actually had really complex villains in this series. The thing that I'm most excited about for this book is finding out the backstory of two of the main antagonists of this series. One of them is kind of known by this point, but there's one that we know very little about their motivations, and I'm so excited for that, and also a little bit more depth on the other one. And it's already been hinted at in this book and also throughout at least Reaper at the Gates that these reveals are coming. Whereas the main characters, like I have nothing, I'm not even curious. Like a driving factor of me reading this book is not how the main characters are going to end up by the end of the series, apart from Helene, because I adore Helene. But the villains and antagonists of this series, it kind of falls into how good and evil isn't black or white, and a lot of times there are grey areas, and as well as that, it is also a matter of perspective. So I do feel like Sabaa Tahir has given us like much more complex, believable villains than heroes in this series, which is great because I love myself a complex, believable villain, but I'm not rooting for the characters apart from Helene, because I feel like her perspective has some of the most emotional moments, and she suffered some of the greatest losses throughout the actual events of this series. So that's where we're at. I'm going to go and read. It's 2:30. I'm going to go and read until about 4 p.m. and then I think I'm going to work out, read a little bit more, and then get some food. And fingers crossed, if I stagger it out like that with solid chunks of reading, we will finish this book by tonight because it needs to be done. So it is midday on Tuesday, but last night I did manage to finish A Sky Beyond the Storm by Sabaa Tahir. But before we get into that, we've had a little bit of a plot twist. This morning Hamilton was just being a bit rowdy, so I picked him up to put him in his cage, and when I closed the door and locked it, I've now put my back out. I was stood in the middle of the living room for about 40 minutes because I couldn't move. I don't know how I got from crouching to stood up, to be honest, because I just could not move after that. I was just stood, and I could shuffle around a bit, but that was about it. I couldn't even, like, my drink was probably at about thigh height on a table next to me. I couldn't pick it up, and I started like sweating really badly. Curtis got me some painkillers, so he's rubbed ibuprofen gel into it and deep heat, and also given me some ibuprofen, and we managed to get me out into my desk chair, and now I'm just stuck here staring at my computer. Hamilton has a vet appointment tomorrow that I'm supposed to take him to. Curtis is not fabulous with animals, so Hamilton stuff normally comes down to me, and now Hamilton is in the other room howling in his cage while I'm sat here howling in my desk chair. So that's what's going on with me. If there is any disruption to my schedule, I have no idea how long this is going to take to heal. I will go to the doctors if it doesn't ease up by tomorrow morning in any way, shape or form, but at the minute I'm kind of locked into this desk chair, so I'm gonna edit this vlog and sort that out while I've got nothing else to do because I'm stuck here. But that means that I gotta wrap this up. So I read A Sky Beyond the Storm and I gave this one 4 stars. I will say, I think that the end scene in here, like the big battle that everything builds up to, was phenomenal, and it kind of, I don't want to say that it makes all the middle stuff worth it, because that's a lot of the middle stuff I didn't enjoy, but it kind of makes sense why everything happened the way it did and why certain plot points that I wasn't a fan of happened for it to come to this big battle scene. Now the sad thing about this is that the whole middle I just was not a fan of like the series as a whole. So I feel like the first book is definitely still the best one in here. This one is the second best, and I would say Torch Against the Night, and the worst one is Reaper. I do still think that one of the issues with this is that the villains are way more complex than the heroes. So throughout the last portion of this I teared up twice, and both of those were because of the villains in this series, not the heroes. I still do really appreciate that Sabaa Tahir is ruthless, because there were things in here that I just was not expecting, especially because we've had so much of the ruthlessness throughout the rest of the series. Now that would kind of imply that there would still be ruthless stuff to come, with the stakes being higher in the final scene or final battle or whatever, but I wasn't expecting it, and I have really appreciated that about this series, that there are actually casualties and consequences and sacrifices that have to be made. So when things are high stakes, they are actually really high stakes. In terms of like the rest of the book, like all of the bit that comes before that final battle, I would say it was probably on par with A Torch Against the Night for me in terms of how much I enjoyed it. So overall, like, not the best, but that end scene was 5 stars, and I'm really glad that I persevered. Well, not persevered. This is the thing, like, I've been saying things like, oh, it's not as good and it's not as compelling, but I still managed to get through this series in a week and a day, or like a week and 6 hours, because I only started an Ember in the Ashes on like last Monday evening. So that still speaks for this series. Like, it's still enjoyable enough that I managed to read this in an entire week, and it didn't really get to a point where I was like, I actually cannot do this anymore, it's so boring, I want to put it down. So my thoughts on the series overall is that, I don't know, I guess I would say it's decent. Like, the middle is definitely not great. The first book is amazing, so if you haven't picked up the first book and you're interested in this series, then I would say definitely do that, because the first book was so good. My only problem with it really was the writing, and it had that touch of melodrama which was like having me rolling my eyes, but that definitely tapers off and is only present in the first book. And then I would also say give the second book a try, and if you enjoy the second book, you might as well persevere through the third one to get to the last one. So I'm actually quite surprised, because I really expected to love this series and I didn't, but at the same time it is still like a solidly decent series. I think that the downfall for me in terms of my feelings of the series overall are the main characters of Laya and Elias. Laya, I was never really rooting for all that much throughout this series. I just wasn't feeling a connection to her, whereas Helene, on the other hand, I think Helene is the best constructed character out of the main characters. And Elias, I did really enjoy him up until his plot takes a certain turn that I just was not a huge fan of, but I did end up enjoying him by the end. And when I say like I don't feel connected to Laya, I did still enjoy her. I just think that in terms of her personality, I definitely gelled more with Helene, and Elias's perspective when it was good was a lot more interesting because of the things that were going on in it. And overall, I think that I definitely enjoyed the martial aspects of this fantasy, which Helene is deeply tied to, a lot more than I enjoyed the magical elements, because the main thing for me with those is, like I've said, the characters just do not seem as intrigued or shocked by anything that's really going on, which made it a little bit less plausible to me. But by the time we get to the end of this series, like all the plot points that came to fruition during that final battle, everything did kind of make sense, and I understand why what happened. I just think it could have been done a little better, but at the same time I can't suggest any ways that I think that it could have actually been done better. So I'm in a lot of pain right now, so I'm gonna leave it there because I don't think I have a great deal more things to add. I'm really proud of myself for getting through this series in a week. I actually didn't think I could do it, and it did take me a little bit longer, but like, I read 400 pages yesterday, which I haven't done in a very long time. Please let me know down in the comments whether you've read Ember in the Ashes and what you think. Also, let me know if you want to see me do any more vlogs like this where I just binge a whole series. But aside from that, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this vlog if you've made it this far. If you have, please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna, and I will see you guys next week. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you're a go when nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.